What's going on, everyone? I'm Teray, and thanks for stopping by, Filling the Hole. Join me each week as I sit with guests as they share their experience, strength, and hope on our journey to overcome suffering. Please enjoy this episode of Filling the Hole. What's going on, everyone? I'm Teray, and thanks for stopping by, Filling the Hole. This week, I'm joined by a new friend, Sheilagh. Sheilagh and I met at a meeting, and I won't bore you with the details because we're going to have a conversation about it. How are you doing, Sheilagh?
I'm okay, Teray, and you are well, it looks like.
I am doing very well, thank you. Yeah, a little bit of a technical difficulties getting set up, but I think we are rolling.
Good.
Yeah, you look fabulous, by the way.
Thank you so much. So nice
Absolutely.
to be seen.
Absolutely. So, Sheilagh, where are you from?
Oh, originally I'm from Philadelphia, but we moved around an awful lot since I was a kid. And then by the time I was 28, I landed in New York City, and that's pretty much been my home for quite some time now.
All right, awesome. I've got some Philly blood in me. I went to Temple University.
Ah, yes, I think actually I've seen your area code is 610 on your cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so funny. Yeah. What brought you to New York?
Well, I was going to be a star, Teray.
Of course. Did you happen to do any acting, or, well, I shouldn't assume. What was your focus?
Well, no, acting, yes.
Yes. Okay.
I had been acting quite a bit in Philadelphia, and I was told instead of going to university that I should come to New York and just start to work. Whether that was the right suggestion or the wrong suggestion, who knows? That's what I did. And I did not arrive sober, but wound up in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
Unbeknownst to, there were no plans for me to wind up there, but long story short, wound up in Newport, Rhode Island, and that's where I was first introduced to AA, where I discovered I wasn't just accompanying my friend to a meeting, I was going to discover that, hey, I'm an alcoholic. So, and that was 41 years ago, and just a few days. I just celebrated my 41st anniversary. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that is quite the feat. Congratulations. I was honored to be sitting alongside you just for a moment, because then they snatched you up and took you to the stage and you were put front and center. But I mean, wow, what an accomplishment. I know that. Yeah, absolutely. I know for me, that is something that it's difficult for me to imagine. I'm still somewhat of a newcomer. I think I shared with you, up until basically middle February, I was in a rehabilitation center for a few months. And this has kind of been my first stint with any kind of addiction or recovery. And I'm just really leaning into it. It's been such a eye-opening experience. And I would love, this platform is kind of set up just to share that with people that might not necessarily identify, or maybe they have some questions and kind of want to peek into the world of recovery. So I'm so happy you're here. Can you tell me a little bit about that discovery and what that was like for you?
Well, I can't remember a time in my life prior to understanding that I am an alcoholic and a drug addict. I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't feel like there was something very wrong.
Yeah.
I knew that I was smart. I knew that I was personable, and something just never felt right. When I got into acting, I performed as a child, and then family circumstances took a completely different route for me. So I became a caregiver to my family. And then once I became...
I'm sorry to hear that. I know I'm sorry.
Oh, well, thanks. And once I became independent, I found myself going back into the world of the theater. And I read biographies and autobiographies of people in the theater because I wanted to know how they lived because I didn't know how to live. I just
Hmm.
knew that there was something missing and I didn't know what it was. And
Yeah.
um, it was the discovery, surprise, surprise, that there wasn't something missing. There was something that I didn't need, which was dependency on alcohol and drugs that
Hmm.
it just immediately made so much sense to me. And I never looked back. I've never, thankfully, knock on wood, had a relapse. I don't have any desire to drink or use drugs because I just got it. I just got it at that first meeting that, oh, this is the problem. This is the problem. I don't have to read another book. This is the problem. And I was I had hit the bottle pretty hard in the week before I showed up at my first meeting. And so in the rooms is where I did my detoxing, and I was patiently and assiduously cared for by the women in the community. Um, and I did everything I was told because they had what I had been looking for my whole life, a sense
Hmm.
of self, a sense of what I wanted, what I didn't want, where I wanted to go, who I am. And I knew that if I listened to them, that I would figure that all out. And I did. And I did it through 12-step programs, AA for a long time. And I got a sponsor right away who walked me through the steps. And um, I've done three fourth steps over the 41 years, just
Wow.
to make sure that I got to the nitty gritty of all of it.
Totally.
I would say, I just can't seem to get rid of this thing that bothers me, whatever it was. And a sponsor would say, why don't you do a fourth step on that? Just do a fourth step on
Mm.
that particular thing that you can't let go of. And it
Yeah.
would, it would really solve the problem for me. And
Yeah. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on the fourth step, maybe for the viewers and listeners who aren't too familiar with it?
of course, what a great idea. For the fourth step, well, look, I'm going to read the official wording of the fourth step, and then I'll tell you what it
Yes.
means to me. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, the first fourth step I did, Teray, was an autobiography. That's pretty
Mm.
much what it was. And it
Hmm.
hours, and I thought my sponsor was either going to fall asleep or call a stop to it. What your fifth step is when you share it with another. So, but I was very, very detailed and organized, and just pretty much wrote an autobiography. And
Mhm.
um, that's not what everybody's fourth step is, but that's what mine was. A subsequent fourth step had to do with romantic, intimate relationship that was over, but I couldn't stop obsessing about. Like, had been over for a few years. It wasn't,
Yeah.
oh, I just broke up, and then a month later I'm still upset. No, no, this has been going on for
Yeah.
years, and
And
my
if I may, that's sorry. If I may, I mean that's something I think addicts have in common. It's that obsession of fantasy, or just like what it was supposed to be, and not being able to let go or pivot from there. And we're kind of stuck. If I can speak for myself.
I think that it is not uncommon what we're both talking about. Uh,
Hmm.
in the addict world and in the non-addict world,
Yeah.
romantic, intimate relationships can get very complicated, and especially for someone who's new in discovering who they are without a dependency on alcohol or drugs, I think
Hmm.
can get really, really mushy there. So I did a fourth step on my relationship, And when I did the fifth step, when I shared it with my sponsor, it really, I mean, it was like magic. I was like done. I was like done, you know, over, over,
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
So I don't remember how we got into this. Oh, you asked me specifically to talk about the fourth step and the fifth step.
Yeah, yeah, no, and thank you for doing it so beautifully. I mean, you touched on a lot of things that I can relate to, and I know others can. Um, and thank you for explaining that, and how that applied to you.
Sure.
Um, I guess we were kind of going with the flow of, yeah, what it was like. There was something else you touched on, if I could backtrack. You detoxed in the rooms.
Oh yeah.
That, wow, wow. And if I may, just for those that might not really understand how powerful that is, with addiction, when we have these things that we rely on so heavily, they almost fuse with us and they become a part of us. So when you take that away, and there's some consequences, physical, emotional, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to stop doing whatever this thing is that I shouldn't be doing and I'm going to adapt and be normal. No, your body can go through withdrawals depending on what it is. And you tremor. I mean, can you touch on that?
Sure. I got sober in 1983, and there was a rehab center in Newport, Rhode Island. Uh, but that was for people who had money or had insurance, and I had neither.
Mm.
And I never knew anyone that had gone to that rehab center. But in fact, the meeting where we met, one of the members came up afterwards and said he had been to that rehab center
Oh,
when
wow.
I was in the rooms detoxing the exact same time he was in that rehab center because he had insurance at the time. So to detox without medical supervision was extremely, extremely common in 1983. Extremely common. And
Wow.
it is physical and emotional. Uh, your thoughts are going absolutely crazy, and you can go from almost catatonic to screaming with rage or terrified that there are conspiracy theories being written, being concocted against you. And then physically, you get the shakes, the
Mm.
DTs. Medical term is delirium tremens.
Hmm.
So I had the DTs for the first 4 or 5 days because I had hit the
Mm.
sauce pretty hard before I got to my first meeting.
Yeah.
And sweating, hot flashes, the whole thing. Most of the eyelashes on my right eye lost their pigmentation. I had white lashes on my right eye
Wow.
quite some time until the new lashes grew back in. It was really, really, really crazy. And um, this was not an unusual event for people in AA who had been around for a while. They knew how to handle it and knew how to keep their eyes open if someone was really dangerously ill, and they would be taken to the emergency room. Um,
Mm.
but I would hallucinate in meetings.
Yeah.
And, speaking of conspiracy, there was one meeting in particular when someone would scratch their nose, and I thought, is that a signal? And then another person would sneeze, and I would think, yep, that's the answer to that scratching.
Hmm.
And then somebody would
Hmm.
off, and I thought, okay, so now there's three of them in on the conspiracy. After about
Yep.
5 did normal, everyday, physical things, I decided that was the time when I was going to stand up and scream bloody murder and tell them if
Hmm.
anyone came near me, I was going to go to Bora Bora. Now, I didn't know where Bora Bora was. I don't know where. I have no idea. But it got two women up. First, a man got up to come toward me, and I gave him the stink eye. And so he knew,
Hmm.
back off. And two women got up and came next to me, sat on either side of me, held my hands, and I got through that particular crisis. But it was nuts. There was
Yeah.
also a very, very common aid for detoxing was sugar. So I would applied with cookies from the meetings. All the meetings always had coffee and cookies. So I would be given plates of cookies to eat and taken out somewhere to have an ice cream sundae multiple times a day.
Wow.
And it was very calming because alcohol, ethyl alcohol, is a sugar, detoxing from sugar. So replacing it with a healthier sugar, short-term
Yep.
healthier, and
Yes.
that would calm me down. That would calm me down.
Yeah. That's a tragically beautiful bit of your story. I'm sitting here, and this is my first kind of go around with, hopefully last, right? But with addiction and drugs and alcohol, and the fact that you were rallied around by these women, and they knew what to look for. That's what this program is about. That's what the programs are about. It is being in battle with your brothers and sisters, and they've already faced some of the things that you're going to face, or that you're in the midst of facing, and they walk you through it. And I think there's something so powerful in this community, of recovery, that it's magic. I can't explain it other than it is magic, the way that strangers become family and are with you for this journey. When I was in my rehabilitation center, they gave us a strict no sugar, so I was like, no drugs, no alcohol, no sugar. And you touched on just being very, very elevated at times. I'm going to say I was belligerently angry sometimes. I was sad. I'd be 1 minute I'm screaming at whatever person did something so minuscule to set me off, and then 5 minutes later I'm like crying in the corner in my room. And so that's just what your body is going through, the extreme changes of just trying to regulate. I'll speak for me, because it hadn't been regulated properly in so long, so it was scary. It was, but I'm so thankful for the people that I had alongside me, because I wouldn't have been able to get through it. There were a couple of times I was just like, you know what, F it, I'm leaving, I'm going home, screw you, and everybody else, it's their fault, they're the reason, and lo and behold, it's me, I'm the problem, right?
Yeah, but to have those people around us, and I think my experience, at least, is that I think almost all alcoholics and drug addicts I know have incredible intuition. And I think that many of us can sit still and be calmed because the intention of the people that come to us when we're in need is so pure. I never fought anyone that came to sit next to me, but I was at a meeting. I was probably 3 weeks sober, and it was at the end of a meeting, and everyone was saying goodbye to everyone, and suddenly these two arms came from behind me and were giving me a bear hug like this. Without thinking, I broke free, turned around, and sucker punched. I've never done anything like that before in my life. But this guy was very inappropriate, unintentionally, because I sucker punched him. His nose starts bleeding, and this older man comes up behind him and says, "I've been telling you to not touch people. Now, is this going to finally teach you?" He was another who just could only express himself by hugging people.
Oh my God.
We're thinking maybe he never did that again after I saw.
Yeah, I mean, be smart.
Wept in and took me away because they didn't know whether I was going to come back with a left or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never done anything like that before or since.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the things that come over you when your body is trying to rebalance itself,
Yeah,
it's totally unpredictable. And
it
very
is. Yeah.
lucky for you that you were in a facility with professionals.
Hmm.
Very lucky for me that I was in a community with amateur professionals that
Absolutely.
do it all themselves.
Professionals. Absolutely. I was going to say, me personally, and, this might be my brain. Tell me if you can relate. I have a bit of trouble, I guess, buying into people that might not necessarily have walked the steps that we've walked, battling addiction and overcoming this thing. Not that people don't have something to offer, but it's hard for me to take your advice if you haven't taken these steps. There, I guess, there's more camaraderie for me and more buy-in for me when I am speaking to other, addicts and people that have, just overcame, what have you. That word is a lot more worth its weight, in my opinion.
Well, they know us. They know who we are. They know what we're going through. So why wouldn't we listen to them? And, I personally stayed very, very, very close to people in the program for a long time. I left a little after a year. I left that community and
Hmm.
went back to the original place where I was living. And then 6 months later, I left all of that familiarity and went to conservatory, went to a 2-year acting conservatory, and was on my own from there on. On my own, I mean, I was still in meetings, but I was uh, I was in relationship to the outside world. But for the
Yeah.
first 18 months, I was very, very, very close to people in the program because I needed to know how to live. Just needed to know how.
Yeah.
And once I
Yeah. And
got that, I took off and started my own personal bridge back to life. And I've been on the other side of that bridge for a long time now.
41 years. It's so amazing. And what you have been able to accomplish and what you are continuing to accomplish by staying sober, um, it provides people like me, the newcomer, I'll speak for myself, so much hope and so much faith that this is achievable and that this is doable, because it's scary, it's scary. I think getting sober was one of, if not the hardest thing that I've ever had to do, because you are stripped and in front of that mirror and you need to do the work, and there's every stone that needs to be turned over, and there's the light is just, spotlight is on you, and it's just you in that mirror and you can't look away. um I mean, it, it's it makes me emotional because there's been so much in my life that I've tried to just forget and turn away from. And I think that is something most addicts have in common is, my addiction manifests from my trauma, if I'm going to speak for me. Um, you know, my trauma came first, and my solution to my trauma was to numb, to forget about it, pretend it didn't happen, and basically self-medicate. And I didn't realize the baggage that I was carrying with me. Every step that I took, every action that I made, my traumas had like an echo effect in every decision that I made, unbeknownst to me. I'm thinking, oh, everything's fine. I've dealt with that, and that doesn't affect me anymore. Lo and behold, when I, you know, pull the curtain back and I'm really doing that evaluation of self, I'm like, no, you were volatilely reactive your entire life before you got to treatment. I was volatilely reactive, which means if you said or you did, I was going to react bigger, badder, harder. And, I'm thinking I'm calling the shots. Nobody's going to F with me. And I'm, this defense that I've built. Right. And lo and behold, it's a reaction. Like I'm letting other people move my pieces on the board. and I'm just ignorantly just, unaware. Um, yeah, I think it's one of those things that when you are getting sober, it's so important to find that community, because those are going to be the people that notice the small changes in you on a day-to-day basis, for better or worse. The good, they're going to acknowledge, they're going to build you up. If there's, you're steering in the wrong direction, they're going to help pivot and guide you back on path.
You've just said what I think for me was the crux. Alcoholism and drug addiction, there's an extremely strong physical component to it, extremely strong. But basically, for me, and it sounds like maybe for you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, alcohol and drugs were relief from my pain. I had
Yes.
no idea where the pain was coming from. I was so removed from the pain that I didn't even know I was in pain. But I could smell it coming. And I would roll a joint, pop a pill, have a drink, and of course, never just one, you know.
Mm-mm. We're addicts.
There was a spiritual person in my life decades ago who said alcoholism and drug addiction are quests for spirituality. They're just the wrong paths, that's all.
Mm.
And that made a lot of sense to me. And
Yeah.
I did use alcohol and drugs to try to get back to myself. But the pain of the trauma, which came front and center for me at 5 years sober, if you're interested, I'll tell you the details.
Please.
It was said in my day, it was said that you don't get your brains back until 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to make any major decisions for the first 5 years. So some of us do that, some of us don't do that, whatever. But at 5 years, I did get my brains back, but I also got sexual abuse memories that I had never been aware of. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was more difficult than putting down the drink and the drugs, because I had
Yeah.
no idea this had happened to me. But in the 5 years of working the program, I had established enough of a foundation for my mind to let those doors open. And
Mm-hmm.
holy moly, what a trip that was. I mean, that really, that's when I said, I need to be put somewhere. I cannot deal with life with having this go on. And I
Mm-hmm.
was catapulted into therapy, and the therapist said, well, you can do that. Uh, but the braver way to do it is to live your life and deal with this that's coming up. You've got 12-step programs, you've got a therapeutic relationship with a professional, and it's not a moral issue, but it will take bravery. And the only reason I'm saying this to you, Sheila, is because I think you are a very brave person. And those words got me to not check into some place that probably would not have helped me anywhere near what living my life and dealing with this trauma helped me. It was
Wow.
a trip, and boy, did AA, and at the time NA was a part of my life as well, because you weren't supposed to really talk about drugs in an AA meeting, and so I
Mm-hmm.
NA, to hear about drugs and to talk about drugs. But eventually that seems to all have drifted away. And I think people talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Totally. Yeah. The lines are definitely blurred now from my little bit of experience in the rooms. And thank you so much for sharing that. I can really relate. I can really relate. And, we kind of, I kind of started with, that trauma is what that addiction is protecting you from. And it was doing its job. It was shielding us from having to, look on the other side of the fence. And my sponsor, Bob Kay, he's fabulous. He talks about joy comes in to the same doorway that the pain and those traumas do. And so it's up to us, and I'm butchering his, metaphor or his, but it's up to us to not bolt that door up, to not board it up so that nothing can get in, but to make way and room so whatever does come through that door, we're able to deal with it. Because when we use drugs and alcohol, we're just boarding it up. We're like, you know what? I don't want to feel anything. Joy, happiness, sorrow, misery, jealous. I don't want any of it. And the drugs do a good job. They work for their intended purpose. But how miserable is that of a life to not experience all that it is to be human? And I think that as addicts, I'll speak for myself. My feelings feel 10 times bigger than when I explain something to somebody or they're explaining to me. My feelings feel so much bigger than like the normies out there. I'm not sure if you can relate or not, but it's like, we're sensitive. We're sensitive. If we weren't, we wouldn't be trying to just mask everything and not deal,
Well, yes. And I will say that I do believe that my very, very, very early traumas electrified my nervous system. That's the best way I can describe it. So I'm highly sensitive, which means
Yeah.
I feel pain more than some people, but I also feel joy more than some people. I just feel more than some people.
Mhm.
And then to complicate that or simplify it, whichever way you want to look at it, I am a creative artist, and
Mm.
there's no doubt that creative artists are much more affected by
Mhm.
name it, fill in the blank, So,
Totally.
so I get the double whammy of being highly, highly, highly sensitive. But
Yeah.
Ray, uh, working the steps, they say that you find relief in the meetings and you find recovery in the steps. And for me,
Mhm.
working the steps, and today, steps 10, 11, and 12, I do every day. That's just a part of my life. Um,
Yeah.
Working the steps is what's allowed me to feel who I am and what my experiences mean to me and not go out of control over it. I know when to remove
Yeah.
myself. I know when to say, no, there's too much on my calendar. Doesn't matter how much I want to do, I have to cut back. I need time to rest and restore, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. And what a beautiful way to live life. It sounds like you've been given the tools, the hammer to remove those nails out of that door frame and take those boards down and be able to process those feelings as they come in. I'm only on step 2. I have ADHD, in my mind, I'm on steps 4, 5, and 6. And then my sponsor's like, no, calm down. This is what we're doing today. So, and easy does it, all those sayings that we hear. And I'm just buying into what I'm being told. I have such a yes and approach to anything somebody offers me with recovery or sobriety. And that's how we met, right? A friend actually suggested the meeting that we met at, and I was like, yes, and let's go. And then, I went downtown to the center for another meeting immediately after. And I think I went to 5 meetings the day that we met.
What better way to spend your time at this stage? What better way?
What else? I'm investing in myself, and that's something that I haven't done. Lord knows when. I couldn't even tell you. I've never had the opportunity to just stop and be. I'll go into a little bit about my background. I grew up in a very, very chaotic, upbringing. Um, it was it was something different every day. I'll just leave it there. And when I got to rehab in California, my second day in clinic, because we were on campus and then we were shuttled to clinic from 9 to 5, and then we were back to, Monday through Friday, doing the work. That is doing the work. But on my second day of clinic, I went into my counselor's office, and I was like, "Hey, girl, so this like group isn't going to work for me that you lead. I know that we're on the more intimate side with the 7-8 that's in here. I can't relate to anybody. I'm probably going to go over and take that counselor. It's not you, it's me. I just need more support, and I don't." I go on this, mind you, she's on her lunch break. Like, I go on this whole, 10-15 minute spiel about how, I'm not getting what I need. And she goes very calmly after I'm done just running my mouth. And she's like, so can I talk now? I'm like, sure. She's like, so if I may make an observation, you are in a hypervigilant state of arousal constantly, which means that cortisol is overflowing in your system, which is good when you're in fight or flight, but your dial is broken and that's always on. You're also an empath. You observe everything that's going on around you. The unfortunate thing for you is you're heavily impacted by everything that's going on around you because you're hyperarousal and you're empath. And then she goes, and you're a control freak. So this is what's going to happen. You are going to stay in my group, and we are going to talk about things, and you are going to hear other people's stories, and you are going to not need to relate or need to have an. She became my best friend by the end of it, and I am just so thankful for her. She was really one of the largest moments. She was able to show me one of the largest moments that kind of, when you're at that fork in the road, you talked about it earlier, where it was either this way or this way. I think you were referring to. You said in my brain it was like a fork in the road. There was a reference you made earlier. Anyway, it'll come to me. ADHD, right? But it was that fork in the road moment for me where I could continue to tell you everything that was wrong with this rehab. And of course, it's life. There's going to be shit wrong everywhere you go. There's imperfection everywhere. Who am I, right? Or I'm going to surrender. And she helped me. She really helped me see the bigger picture, that hill is not worth dying on, and really helped me cultivate peace and turn that dial off, because I didn't even realize that was a thing. Like, in my brain, everybody's this crazy.
That is such a great example of an angel that has come into your life. And
Yes.
you will have countless, countless, countless more angels who will look very different and will speak very differently, but they will be angels nonetheless.
Yeah.
Can we talk for a minute about the second step?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So technically, according to the literature, second step is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So
Yeah.
I had no problem knowing that I was insane. I had absolutely no problem with that at all. And I promptly would tell anybody who would say, "Are you getting down on your knees at night?" I say, I'm in, but don't give me any of that God shit. I don't
Mm-hmm.
hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to even hear about it. And very calmly, people would say, "Well, you're going to have to do this, because if you want, you say what we have. We all have a relationship with a higher power. So you're going to have to do it. And you may as well
Yeah.
do it sooner rather than later." So I was camped out on a friend's sofa, the friend who said she needed support to get to an AA meeting, which she was 12-stepping me the whole way. I didn't even know it. So I'm sleeping on her sofa, and so I'm awake one night, and I said, "Okay, fine, fine. I will open myself to the idea of a higher power." So, I mean, I have meditated before, so I closed my
Mm.
eyes and I looked, and I could not believe that something appeared. It was an octopus
Okay.
with one huge blue eye, with these curling lashes, with these 8 arms floating around. And I was like, are you a higher power? Blinked her eye. Now, I'm still in the DTs, but whatever. This is what came to me.
It's your experience. Yeah.
And I said, okay, so I could kind of deal with this, but I'm going to have a really hard time calling you God. And I heard this voice say, my name is Lisa. So Lisa, the octopus, was my higher power for a long, long, long time, well into my second year of sobriety. And I didn't care who knew about it or who didn't know about it, but they stopped driving me crazy with this higher power stuff because I had a higher power. It was Lisa.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people, I mean, I know a man who's been sober 6 or 7 years now. He is very, very, very engaged in the recovery, especially in the theater world. He's very, very engaged in helping people into recovery. And he does not believe in anything beyond the science. He does not believe that there is a higher power.
Yeah.
For me, it was crucial to get there. And my higher power has had many, many iterations over the decades. And, but I've always had one since that first Lisa the Octopus. And people who knew me in my early days, they will say to me, how's that octopus doing? I mean, they don't really remember that story, but that was what I could come up with or what was given to me. I don't know, but it kept me more sane than what
Hmm.
I'm saying. I don't need a higher power because I did need one. And the man that I'm referring to, he is so engaged in recovery and in his own personal program. He doesn't want a higher power. I don't have a problem with it at all. It's not my experience. I don't quite understand.
Hmm.
But tell this story because over the years it has helped many, many people understand that they don't have to think of a white man with a beard in robes sitting on a gold throne or all the different iterations of what God is to many different religions and spiritual paths. And octopus
Yeah.
work just fine.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. I could, beautifully said. And thank you because you hit on something I think is crucial in early recovery. Um, I am in early recovery. When I first got to rehab, and oh God, I mean, I'm not even going to go into what it was like because it was bad. I mean, I was probably in active addiction for a year straight. And the last 3 months, I was estranged from my husband, my family, my friends, and I was engulfed in the drug world, the drug life. Yeah. And when I got to rehab, I had to unlearn because I tapped into my survivor, abilities, and it was, I had to survive. So when I got to rehab and it's this, higher power, going to meetings and whatnot, yeah, I'm still, coming down, going through it. Brain is swirly and a mess. But somebody said to me, "Well, you know what? You have a higher power right now." I'm like, "What? No, no, I don't. You don't know me. You do. It's drugs and alcohol." And I just like that hit me like a ton of bricks. That hit me like a ton of bricks. They said, because you show up with blind faith and whatever it is that you're doing, and you think that is going to bring you relief and make you happy. You do have a God. You are serving someone, and it's drugs and alcohol. And, you know, that is just like I like right now I'm feeling chills because that's how powerful it was and still is. And so for me, it was not that I didn't have a higher power because clearly I did, but I was serving the wrong higher power. Um, and so once that kind of sunk in, it was okay. I need to be open right now spiritually to hear who my real higher power is, because I've had my blinders on and my headphones on. And what ended up coming, I guess, for me, I could find my higher power, and to this day, it's in nature. It is. You said that your friend is, the hard hitting science, and that is, he can't get behind spiritual or religion. I don't consider myself a religious person, but I do consider myself a spiritual person. And even if we date back and we use science to do so, there is this idea or theory, excuse me, of the Big Bang. Well, where the hell did that come from? You know what I mean? Where did these stars that spontaneously combust and create galaxies come from? That to me is all the freaking proof I need to know that there's something much bigger and brighter and more intelligent. I mean, you believe in science, believe in whatever you want, but keep following the trail. Don't just say, well, a man and a woman have a baby and that's that. No, let's look for the beauty. And that's where my higher power lies in today. I find it in the ocean. I find it in a strong, gust of wind. My little fur babies, London and Rio, I have a Dobie and a mini Dobie. The love that they provide and their unconditional, just like infatuation and love. And, it's like these feelings that I am able to experience now. That's proof that there's someone out there that is creating the beauty, and I'll go back to my sponsor. He says, look for it and you'll find it. It's so simple. Whatever you are focused on, we manifest things. I meditate as well. We manifest things, and whether we're aware that we're doing it or we're not, it's happening. So be conscious of your thoughts, people.
Yay.
Well, yeah, this has been absolutely fabulous. I don't want to keep you all day, although I feel like I could. I feel like we could chit chat all day and I would just be infatuated with each word. But I will ask you, is there any advice or any suggestions that you have for somebody that may be interested in experiencing recovery, or just starting to, turn over those stones and peek what's underneath?
Well, since my only experience in recovery is through 12-step programs, I would suggest someone look up a list of 12-step programs in their area.
Mm-hmm.
The number of AA meetings in New York City alone is absolutely astounding. And thanks to the pandemic, a lot of meetings are available online. You don't even have to leave your apartment to go to a meeting. I personally am thrilled that many, many meetings are in person now. The online stuff is great for in a pinch, and we were in a pinch for a few years, but here we are back in person. So beyond 12-step groups, I don't know, you had your experience in medical rehab, but for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to meetings, and there are meetings that are for beginners, meaning that there are a lot of people who have long-term sobriety that are going to be there, but the focus is on what a beginner might be best helped by hearing, and also opportunities to share before the people with longer recovery are there. And it was very hard for me to understand for a long time, but boy, I know now that there is no medicine better than for me to hear a newcomer speaking about how they don't know how they're going to get through the day, about how
Totally.
they don't know how they're going to pay their bills. The man that we experienced at the meeting we were at a few days ago, he found out he's not going to see his daughter for 8 years. Now, there's a hell of a story behind that, but it's got to do with drugs and alcohol, whatever the story is,
Oh, yeah.
And a man across the aisle from him reached out and held his hand. And as I was leaving the meeting, there was another man in deep conversation with that man who was in so much pain. So getting to a meeting is about a newcomer taking stuff, but whether the newcomer understands it or not, it's about giving stuff too. It helps us to remember, oh yeah, I know exactly what that's like. Thank God that's not in my life today.
Yeah.
That's the only advice I have is get thee to a meeting, and if you don't like it, go to another meeting. And if you don't like that,
Hmm.
go to another meeting. And if somebody says something that makes a little sense to you, maybe you talk to them after the meeting. You
Yeah.
get what you need. And
Yeah.
you take what you need and you leave the rest. Not everything that happens in a meeting is for everybody. And you just,
Hmm.
after a few years or a few decades, you learn to just let that stuff go that's not for you, and you take whatever it was. And sometimes a meeting just doesn't mesh for me, Teray, and I walk out of there saying, well, I had an hour of quiet and solitude from the outside world. The rest of this place was really not a good fit for me. But that's happened like what, 3 times in 41 years? So
Wow, I love
that's
that.
my advice. Get thee to a meeting somehow, some.
Yeah. No, and that is fabulous advice, Sheila. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Uh, just thank you for being you and being an example of what it can be for a lot of the newcomers.
You're so welcome, Trey. It's a pleasure to spend time with you.
Likewise. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take good care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.